what they try to do is they start out with just corporate reposts and corporate shares. It drives me absolutely batty, right? We have a product post, we have a corporate post, and then you see if you actually dig into who's liked it, who's commented, who's reshared it, right? It's going to be nothing but same people in the company, same sales reps, same sales team. And so that's probably the number one thing that I see, at least from a healthcare executive perspective, is they're not putting their voice out there. It is, they're relying upon kind of a social media team that is fairly watered down.
All right. We have a special guest today on the Content Crib podcast, don't we ever, Eric?
Yes. And the podcasts are always better when we have guests.
They do perform much better, and we've been talking about having guests back on for, 3 or 4 months, and
yes.
We're so blessed to have an amazing guest here today. We have Ryan Van Puffelen, who for 25 years watched orthopedics quietly change hands, not the surgery, the control, where the cases happen, who owns the economics, and who gets to decide what comes next. He has spent a career completely inside that shift, from the hospital floor to the ambulatory surgery center, and he has come away with a clear point of view. The ASC movement is not about a cheaper place to operate. It is about power. Today, Ryan will walk through ASC strategy, surgeon autonomy, the real role of private equity, and how he turned a LinkedIn account into actual influence in a field that usually rewards staying quiet. He helps healthcare leaders build a voice, create value, and stop borrowing other people's stages. Ryan, welcome to the Content Crib podcast.
You bet. Chris, Eric, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a awesome introduction. So we're going to let you start from when you were a child. No, I'm kidding. We're going to take us into an intro about you and what you're doing, and thank you so much again for coming on.
Yeah, you bet. As Chris said, I'm a longtime ortho guy, 25 plus years in the industry, a variety of different roles, from product development to marketing to professional education. And just as a little bit of backstory, so I was heading up our professional education team about 8-9 years ago, maybe 9-10 years ago, and we did our first ASC national course. It was one time a year, just kind of teaching surgeons how to transition higher acuity cases to lower acuity sites of care, or the ASC. And I went to our director at the time and I said, take everything else off my plate. The only thing I want to do is talk about this shift. Just let me own it from soup to nuts. And thankfully they agreed with that. And so we kind of, what started out as like one national course a year turned into 4 national courses, 8 regional education courses across the country. We did dinner meetings, we did cadaver labs, and we built out a whole ecosystem of education and visitation sites across the United States. So did that for about 4 years, and then about 4 years ago transitioned back into the commercial side of the house, a marketing role where I really lead all of our ASC, what I call strategic thought leadership. So how do we think about the ASC space? How do we talk to surgeons and administrators and all the influencers that are in this side of care, and bring productive solutions to help them support their practices and their business? So once again, appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question I wanted to ask you, because what you're doing is incredible and so needed for the space. So thank you for doing that. And I think that you really your clarity on the KOL to the DOL shift is so on point. And I wanted to kick off like the first question on this, because I think that you absolutely nail this. So for people who don't live in this world, and that may not, the people that listen to this podcast are mostly in healthcare, but we have some listeners that aren't, but to do understand the value of what we talk about, and personal brand building and being relevant online and creating your voice. But for people who don't live in this world, break down KOL versus DOL, what actually has changed.
Sure. Yeah. So KOLs was what we term in healthcare key opinion leader. So it's some of those more influential, typically surgeons, orthopedic surgeons who kind of have an outsized voice in orthopedics. So they tend to be the surgeons that are consulting surgeons, they are leveraged for professional education. They're invited to conferences and speak on behalf of organizations. They host groups into their operating rooms and provide education there. They're the ones that are speaking from the podiums. That's your historical kind of KOL, and then eventually a lot of them kind of work with orthopedic companies on the royalty side or new product development side of things. What I have seen really over the past, I'd say 4 to 5 years, is the shift from that concept KOL to DOL, which is a digital opinion leader, and you see it really across all of our industry. Several of the folks that are on this podcast probably know of surgeons that you can find on LinkedIn. It's your Dr. Corey Calendines, it's your Dr. Ryan Mollies, it's your Chris McClellan, it's your Scott Sigmund, it's your Dominic Marino. You just go down the list. Yeah. Charlie DeCook, right? You're very familiar with these names. And there has been a rise in some of these DOLs to really kind of change the narrative of what we talk about in orthopedics. And so I kind of saw that coming early on and really have leaned into that from my own LinkedIn journey and kind of have enjoyed finding my own voice, frankly, over the past 4, 5, 6 months and enjoying the space quite a bit.
Well, take us through that. Actually, let's pivot a little bit here and take us into your journey, or maybe where it started or where it is today. What were you doing that really started working, or when did it kind of click for you?
So I posted about this, I don't know, probably last week or so. But my journey or experience on LinkedIn was always haphazard, right? Like I'd be at a conference and post about it and maybe tag a few people and throw a couple hashtags on there, and then you go radio silent for the next 3 months, and then you post something else, or you go on a business trip and maybe you write something up about it. But March 1st of this year, I decided to get much more serious about it and much more focused on it, and that led to kind of me thinking a lot more about how I want to position myself and frankly call it the RVP brand on LinkedIn. And so it's more consistent posting. It's really thinking a lot about the lanes that I want to be talking consistently about. So that's ASCs, it's private equity, infusion, and kind of the PE dynamics of healthcare. The concept of surgeon control, and specifically the intersection of surgeon control, private equity, and ASCs all coming together. And then I like to sprinkle in, a little bit of flavor, right? Like the world would be way too boring if it was, didn't have a little bit of salt and spice in there. So I'll talk about everything from my Yorkie to playing Magic the Gathering to coin collecting to whatever hobby I pick up for this week that drives my wife insane. Like you have to kind of flavor it a little bit and let people know who you are on LinkedIn. And since March, I mean, for me, I kind of track the metrics a little bit as much as LinkedIn gives them to me. 100,000 impressions, just kind of being consistent with posting in those lanes and talking about things that are of interest to me and hopefully interest to others.
I want to, I know Eric is dying to jump in here, but sorry, I want to just ask one question. Will you jump in a second? You had a great post about the picking the lanes, and I think this is like golden material right here. I had this conversation the other day actually with my brother, who's a listener to the podcast, Robbie. So if you're painting your house and listening, what's up? He was trying to understand. He's in this space that he's currently in. He's successful. He doesn't know if he's going to be in it forever, but he pictures himself at the company, and he's like, where do I don't want to pigeonhole myself into this. And I went through a little bit. We were at one of his son's birthday parties, so we couldn't get into too much. I ended up making him a little bit of a playbook that he can kind of, rack his brain and see where he can take it. But I think it's so important because you posted about how you picked your lanes, and it's really important because of that big A word that everyone tries to be an expert on, but nobody is. but it is relevant to how the algorithm is reading and how people are becoming more successful. And it actually really coincides with a lot of the ways that we found to be successful years ago, and now it's more important than ever. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you could have success on LinkedIn by posting generic things that are gonna do very well, right? Like it's the posts that go viral, right, are those that here's my top 10 lists on how to use Claude, right, for LinkedIn, traffic, driving, or for modernizing my day, or what happens to be, or leadership tips and pearls, or whatever high level, right? And as you both probably know, I think about it differently. I think there's riches in the niches, so to speak, and I think that you're going to have more productive, more fruitful, frankly, more advantageous for yourself, conversations when you define the lanes that you want to speak in and play about. Those are the ones that open up doors for you. Those are the ones that allow you to kind of, be invited to an advisory board conversation or speak at a conference, or, join you two, right, as we are right now, and kind of opening up those conversations that if I was just posting about, my journey from ChatGPT to Claude, it might get a lot of views, but I don't know how impactful that's going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can tell you, there never has been a consultant who's gotten a call for you to share your top 10 things about Claude to anybody.
Right.
So, yeah,
Exactly.
no, I totally agree. Well, I can tell you, one of your lanes that I read your posts and I read a lot about, and I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
2 letters in healthcare now that either drives people absolutely nuts or they go, I'm on board 100%. And those letters are PE, private equity. Where do you see, because I'll give you my opinion about it. Private equity, and since Chris has turned me on to the PE guy on Instagram and everything else. I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. He's hilarious.
No.
Anyway, but
Oh,
you have to. He's a comedian and he's hilarious. But he makes fun of all the PE guys, the way they dress, the way they talk. It's really hilarious. Yeah. But all that being said, is he makes at one point that he was like, the goal of PE is to buy something, enhance it in their minds, make it better, and then sell it. That's the antithesis of what healthcare is about. Healthcare is all about, let's grow together, let's build, let's heal people, let's save lives. It's a very interesting dichotomy right now with that.
Yeah.
And I feel the pendulum swinging to, I hate this thing. This is dumb that this is in the business. What are your thoughts?
How much time do we have? I think
I do, and I almost said, and you only can use this many minutes. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
This is why Eric doesn't make the questions. So
yeah.
I'm not allowed to ask the questions.
Yeah.
He just let me start to hit record, so I'm just telling you. It's a big step.
I know. Yeah. So I think Scott Sigmund said it best. So he was on, I think was one of his podcasts, and he goes, PE is like black licorice, right? Some people love it or you either hate it. I tend to split the difference a little bit, split it down the middle with this. I think PE can be good in the right situations, right? What I think PE often discounts or doesn't really factor in is the cultural side of an acquisition, right? That, like, understanding kind of the dynamics of surgeon control, making sure that surgeons are bought into the process, making sure that the private equity group is willing to kind of preserve as much of that culture as possible. And I also go back to like the idea of surgeon control, which, as you guys know, I'm a huge advocate of. There are upsides with private equity if private equity allows kind of that ASC to remain independent. Maybe there's a group of physicians who they just need the capital to maybe purchase a robotic system or outfit or upgrade their OR system, or maybe they need some help on the operational side to better negotiate contracts or work through claims denials or pre-authorizations. Maybe they just don't have a good IT system set up because it's 2 surgeons and they're not really kind of that savvy at this point, and they need some help. So there's pluses and minuses, right? For sure. And Eric, you brought up second bite. That's often the kind of the goal for a lot of these. But if you can align that with the cultural kind of dynamics of where those group of physicians want to go, and they're kind of bought into the vision, then it can be a success. So talked a little bit more on the positive side. There's for sure negatives where it does not work, and it can certainly turn a lot of people off. So you got to play. Frankly, you have to play a little bit of matchmaker, right? Finding the right private equity firm, matching that up with the right goals and desires and culture of the acquirers, and hopefully go from there. So it's not a either or. I think it's an and.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. No, I understand it, and I've seen a number of instances where it's worked very well. It's helped. It's definitely enhanced whether it's a practice or whatever the entity is trying to do. It's just that weird piece of the puzzle where the goal is to sell it. The goal is not to hold on to it, nurture it, and make it. No, the goal is to sell it in the end, and that's where I guess if you're the entity being acquired by PE and you understand that wholeheartedly, then you're going to be fine. But if you think that anyway, I'm going to go down to say this, and I guess if you think that they're your buddies and everything's going to be great the whole time and it's just going to be fantastic, that's just not the case. That's not what happens.
Yeah, you have to go into it eyes wide open, right? And you have to understand, right, that there's going to be, if you're a surgeon, right, hopefully if the deal is structured right, like you're still going to be given clinical autonomy to do what you want to do, right, and treat patients the way you want to treat them. And in theory, kind of all the operational, the day-to-day running of an ASC, some of the financial mechanisms, the things maybe you don't want to deal with, maybe those are in the hands of a private equity firm that frankly probably knows how to do that a little bit better than your standard orthopod. So if you kind of go into that eyes wide open, then it can be a success. But I've seen them go really bad as well. So you gotta be careful as you work your way through the deal.
What do you see, private equity in this space of building a brand? Like I feel like it's just part of, the things that they don't really care about bucket.
Yeah.
How do you have you seen some forward thinking people that put it at the top of the list of the marketing or prioritize it, or are you just seeing it's too archaic? They're too archaic in a slow.
I see the potential for it. Have I actually seen it in practice? No. I mean, I have seen like a lot of times, if you have a PE firm coming in, they're going to look at ancillaries, right? So what are you doing with imaging? What are you doing with your physical therapy? Are there other, kind of, portions of the practice that you can bring underneath the umbrella, so to speak? And they're also looking at, surgeon retention, surgeon recruitment, those kinds of things. They obviously want those folks to stick around. But I think I have not seen, at least to the scale that I think there could be, infusion into like making your good surgeons busier, right? Which is a lot of what you talk about, Chris, the kind of the marketing behind them and establishing their brand. And that's relatively untapped space. So while in theory, I think it makes a lot of sense, I haven't seen it done practically.
Do you think there's an opportunity, and maybe this is part of what you're thinking about being that kind of ASC, surgeon ninja helps bolster them? I don't know. I mean, to me, it's right. I mean, we all know that surgeons bring in the revenue for the hospitals and different entities and ASCs and whatnot, right? So where do you make them on? How do you get them to understand that building trust at the core of the revenue machine is the fix and not the ancillary? I guess maybe this is a question that can't be answered today, but just kind of where my brain is going.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think you have to, in my mind, it kind of goes back to the culture thing. Like you have to have a PE firm that understands the importance of a surgeon that's wanting to do that for themselves, right? And being able to, again, kind of go back to the idea of surgeon control. Like if that surgeon is wanting to grow, then you need to have a PE firm that is aligned with their growth objectives. And if they're part of that growth objective is developing your own digital voice, then they better be pretty flexible to kind of support them along the way. But again, practically speaking, I haven't seen a lot of people do it. So, I mean, it's a space I'm actively kind of having conversations in and trying to help people out as best I can. Just knowing a little bit of what I know on the PE side and ASC side. But yeah, it's relatively untapped ground.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up, and Eric, maybe bail me out a little bit if I'm going down a bad path, but you know, PE is like the antitrust, right? I mean, a lot of people don't know PE is like it's going on unless you ask people that work there directly, right? But it's like, you know, how do we make PE a good thing? And, you know, that to me that, you know, it could be a good thing, but how do we make sure it's a good thing? That's kind of what I'm thinking of, like, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I think
yeah,
they need to have a
go
firm
ahead,
that
Eric.
can really share their. I think they need to have a firm who can really share their thought leadership in a extremely presentable
Minimal,
way
polished.
and compliantly.
Yes. That's what they need,
Yeah.
Eric. You're right.
That's what they need. You're right. No.
So
That's
while
what they
they
need.
mess up and don't do that and go down and find the right people to help with that, what is the biggest mistake you think, Ryan, healthcare leaders make when they try to build a presence online? When they do it themselves.
Yeah, well, number one, what they try to do is they start out with just corporate reposts and corporate shares. It drives me absolutely batty, right? You know, we have a product post, we have a corporate post, and then you see if you actually dig into who's liked it, who's commented, who's reshared it, right? It's going to be nothing but same people in the company, same sales reps, same sales team. And so that's probably the number one thing that I see, at least from a healthcare executive perspective, is they're not putting their voice out there. They're relying upon kind of a social media team that is fairly watered down, and they're just not having an independent, authentic, relatable, credible voice that people can relate to and start to open up conversations with. So number one, far and away, that's probably what I see the absolute most. You know, that at least it drives me nuts. Eric, what are you seeing?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head, Ryan. I mean, that's what they do. And I get the biggest kick out of what we're going to do is we're going to make a bigger picture of the implant and we're going to put it online again on LinkedIn. It's bigger. It's going to be better. And you're right. It's the same exact people. And, you know, Chris and I preach it, and obviously you get it wholeheartedly, is if you're sharing value, people are going to listen. If you're sharing your stupid sorry, I shouldn't say stupid. If you're sharing a photograph of something new that you're about to sell, no, newsflash, nobody cares. They don't care. And they just, for whatever reason, somebody's telling them they do care. And I think it's the, you know, VP of marketing from 1986 that's telling them that. And I hate to be, I don't want to be rude, but it's just like nobody cares about that anymore. And it's the most mysterious department in all of medical devices, the orthopedics marketing department. I'm like, I say this to a buddy of mine who's a VP of marketing the other day. I'm like, dude, you know you can shut down your department and nobody would know or care. And of course, he told me 30 reasons why I was wrong. Some of them were valid. I mean, I was just trying to be a little bit hyperbolic and, you know, kind of give him a jab, but I don't know. I think the ones who start to get it, I mean, obviously like you and others, that, I mean, it'll be a whole new landscape. But man, truly a benefit to being in the high margin medical device space, because you can be really bad at things and it's still okay.
Yeah, and you have to. I mean, obviously, there's rules about what you can post about and what you can't post about, and it's got to be on label. It's got to be, you know, you can't be off color, you know, those kinds of things. But there's much more creative ways, I think, that all of orthopedic marketing can be a little bit more engaging, because you know, these are actually, if you boil it down, these are kind of very real problems that people who have orthopedic joint pain are struggling with, right? And frankly, it's opportunities missed because people are hesitant to go to doctors. People aren't sure about whether they have enough money to pay for it, what their deductible is, what their experience is going to be. I talk a lot about that, kind of the concierge experience you can get in an ASC relative to the hospital. There's so many different avenues, right, that we could be talking about that are actually real problems for both our customers being surgeons, ASC owners, administrators, and patients, beyond kind of the traditional marketing. That's what gets me fired up, is I enjoy those ancillary conversations, those conversations around the fringes, the concepts like surgeon control and getting autonomy back to those who are delivering the best care for patients. And that's where I think ultimately this is going to go.
Well, on this podcast, we've solved PE, the marketing department of major medical device companies. I mean, I think we've got a lot of progress here, guys. We've done a lot. No, but thank you. I want to thank you, Ryan, for coming on. I really appreciate your perspective. And for those of you who are listening, make sure to follow Ryan on LinkedIn. He shares value every day that he posts.
I appreciate it. Thanks for
thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on, Eric and Chris. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.